All right. Oh, we have a big behemoth movie to discuss.
So you said earlier on...
It's a colon movie.
It's a Can I just tell you, one of the best ever Roger Ebert reviews of a movie was a review that he did of The Brown Bunny by Vincent Gallo, in which he said, on the subject of it's a colon movie, he said, I had a colonoscopy once. They let me watch it on television and it was better than The Brown Bunny. Anyway.
That's good.
Okay, so Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Ryan Coogler's Black Panther was an enormous hit in 2018. It grossed over $1.3 billion worldwide. Second highest grossing film directed by a black filmmaker. Highest grossing film directed by a black filmmaker. Second highest grossing film of 2018, pardon me. First superhero film to be nominated for a Best Picture Oscar. Wow. Starred the great Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, leader of Wakanda, and of course the titular Black Panther. Plans for a sequel obviously started straight away. I mean, the film was a huge, I think a real cultural
it was a moment. Yeah, definitely.
Do you remember that front cover of him?
Incredible. There was so many things that came out of it. I mean, there was just a little bit of behind the scenes footage that was almost as big as the movie itself, where they had African drums there, and all the extras and everybody, the main cast, were all singing and dancing, and people were like, this is a moment here. It's not just a great black character in another white superhero world. This is a black superhero movie real. It
was genuinely properly breaking the mold. So then, obviously, when Chadwick Boseman died, all the plans for a sequel were thrown into disarray. The decision was immediately taken that nobody would try to step into that role because, and quite rightly so, you just can't. That role is definitive. It's wonderful, but it's definitive. So now we have Wakanda Forever. So this is a story that begins with the funeral of T'Challa, who has died since the events of the first film, leaving Wakanda now wondering where it can go from here. So the film begins by confronting the hole that has been left.
Everybody knows,
Yeah, exactly. And, consequently, it's very moving. It's very movingly done, but it is also, you were talking before about the meta thing with the Jafar Panahi film, but there's a meta level on this, which is we are genuinely mourning the loss of that character and that person and that great actor. So into the space steps Letitia Wright Shuri, who's the younger sister of T'Challa, who has put all her energy into attempting to develop new technology, having failed to avert this, where we are now. Also, Angela Bassett is Ramonda, who's the Queen Mother of Wakanda, who must come to terms with losing her son, also protecting her daughter. Lupita Nyong'o is a kid who didn't go to T'Challa's funeral, but is still the one that you will turn to in times of trouble. So you hear from that the kind of, the mournful elegiac tone of that. Now, obviously, then there has to be the narrative, the story, the plot. And this basically takes the form of trouble arising in the form of Namor, who is the leader of an underwater civilization. He has wings on his feet, he's Tenaqueta, and he crosses the US, the US are looking for vibranium with the aid of a device which has been invented by a young MIT student played by Dominic Thorne, who everyone blames Wakanda for what happens. So there's a conflict involving the US, big nations, Wakanda, and then this other emergent nation that nobody knew about, which is under the sea. Fine.
Okay.
The scene is set. Film's 2 hours, 41 minutes long. There is a lot of stuff in it. Here's the remarkable things. Firstly, the cast is led by women of colour, including people like Michaela Cole, who's fantastic. And what is remarkable is that that's not the first thing you notice about the film. I mean, you're a little boy into it before you go, oh, that's actually interesting. Yeah. So I think the world has changed in the years since Black Panther. Second thing is the design, particularly the costumes and the music, are all pretty awe-inspiring. It's like this is done properly, and if you just want to sort of revel in the majesty of, wow, that's great design, that's terrific. I happen to have a thing about costume design, so that's great. As a Marvel movie, there are issues. I mean, the underwater people they look like the blue people they look like the Na'vi from Avatar. There are certain water sequences which, cast my mind back to James Cameron's The Abyss. There's flying suits that are kind of like, gender reversed Iron Man. And there's occasional hint of Transformers even in there. There are many plot threads, umpteen characters. And the third act becomes that usual melee of, parallel editing. So parallel editing is really interesting because it goes right back to the sort of birth of cinema with Edwin S. Porter's, Life of an American Fireman and the Great Train Robbery. Look, two separate things going on beside you. Now, most superhero movies, the third act, there's 7 different things going on and we're parallel editing between them. And I find that a little bit tiresome. Some of the CG isn't great. Doesn't so much defy gravity as ignore it. It's a bit weightless. And honestly, outside of Stingray, I have struggled to take underwater enemies that seriously. I'm not entirely sure that I buy into it. But for a film that has so much stuff in it and so much stuff that doesn't quite work for me, what's surprising is how much the elegiac quality of it did really strike me.
Right.
I came out of the film 2 hours, 41 minutes later, and I was walking up with a colleague of mine, Linda Marrick, whose opinions I've always taken very seriously. And we were both quite quiet. And we were on the escalator out of the screening room, which is quite a long way down. We'd gone a while without saying anything to each other before going, that was really quite moving, wasn't it? And you were saying, yeah, I was. And she said, I shed a tear about it. And what I think is really interesting is that for a film that's got so much smashy, crashy, runny, jumpy, speary, splashy, boom, boom stuff going on, the overall tone of it somehow does manage to feel like an elegy, like an ode, like it actually has some heart to it. Also, bear in mind, I saw it on the day of the midterms, in which the whole idea of a film, which is quite avowedly anti-imperialist, in which there are jokes about, of course, the US shouldn't have sole access to this kind of material, because think what would happen if they did. A film which basically has at its heart a message which is completely out of sync with what the message of an awful lot of superhero movies have been before, which is that, American justice must triumph, and blah. You're going back to all the discussions about Superman and all the kind of political worries about all that. It's not preachy, but it is all in there. And I think it's also implicitly pacifist, and it is also implicitly about building allegiances in a way that's more complex than one might initially go. So I think beneath all the surface noise and underneath the extended running time, there are things about it that are really impressive. And also, it's the first time I've actually thought this is a great big action-adventure movie in this particular canon that actually felt like it earned the right to feel like an elegy, like an ode. Like it wasn't just performative. It wasn't just, we're doing this because we have to. It actually felt, and this is not a word I use often about Marvel movies, heartfelt. So there's a lot wrong with it. There, I'm just never going to buy into the underwater Smurfs. Sorry, there we go. But the fact that that's not what I took out of it, I think is kind of important.
So, maybe an hour less. No underwater Smurfs.
Well, no underwater Smurfs is going to take away the bulk of the plot.
Right.
So I just think you can't. It's not a solvable problem.
Right.
And incidentally,
it's not that simple.
Far be it from me to. Excuse me, Ryan Coogler. Let me just explain how this movie could be made better. No, that's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
These are the things that didn't work for me.
Okay.
But the things that did work overrode them, and I do think that that's impressive.
Yeah, and looking at it, the feeling that would have been around that place would have been undeniable. There's no surprise that it seeped into performance and the feel of the movie, because everybody would have genuinely felt that way.
Except when you say it's no surprise it was seeped in, as you know, the thing about those Behemoth movies is they will tread the life out of anything.
Yeah.
And so it is a surprise.
Yeah. Similarly, a comedy, as we well know, where everyone's having a great time.
Yeah.
Making it doesn't necessarily mean we have a great time
never
watching
funny.
it.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. While you're here, check out all the other videos because they're cool too, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to date with everything Kermode and Mayo's Take, then check out our social channels.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I would. But I have done.
Excellent.